All right, coming up next. Along the lines of how it gets done, I'm going to say two headlines for this next session. How it gets done, and instead of just saying legend, I'll say legends, because this is a session where we're going to hear some of the smartest minds, people who've done it. That's what we're getting here. People who know what they're doing to talk about it, to talk about how it gets done, and have a discussion. So I'm going to welcome our good friend Julian Zilberbrand, who's going to bring up his panelists. Please, Julian, come on up and introduce your group here. Come on, bring it up.
Hello.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's looking great.
Everybody's mics are on.
Hello, everybody. I've been looking forward to this for the last hour. Everybody, I'm assuming, can read here, so we're going to skip introductions. And I want to get into the content because we have a limited amount of time and we have really intelligent people who I'm trying to learn from. And I want to make sure that I give them every opportunity to speak. So, Suzie, I want to start with you. We've heard a lot already about the challenges of brand safety in the marketplace, specifically in the CTV ecosystem. It's rapidly evolved, right? And there are fast channels jumping up every 5 minutes. There's a new fast channel. So outside of the big 10 or 12 companies, how are agencies and advertisers looking to strike a balance between driving sales and delivering results for the clients and ensuring brand safety when you have a new opportunity to advertise in a new content lane every day?
Great question. So I think you first have to look at why do advertisers and agencies keep going back to those 10 and 12, and it's because they know what they're getting, they feel safe there. There is a bit of a lack of transparency over there, but hopefully that will come as we work, but transparency is available, and I think as we move into the fast apps and opportunities that are coming out there, especially in programmatic, because there's opportunities for efficiencies with optimization and obviously with cost. We need the transparency to get out there.
So what specifically is missing from a transparency perspective?
From the transparency point of view on the performance side would be great if there could be more viewability. You could see some of the digital aspects that we've come to be familiar with in the digital realm. Clicks, well, that's not over there, but was there somebody changing the channel or turning up the volume? This is digital, so you expect
TV on or off, that kind of thing.
On or off. Yeah, evidence that somebody's in the room, but then on the brand safety front, what is out there as far as classifications, not going back to the keywords, because that really isn't necessarily in CTV, but the contextual alignments, whether it be avoidance or targeting for positivity or neutral. How do we get past the app and into what's inside the content? So I think there needs to be a little bit of what's back there before all the investment shifts.
All right, so Mario and Ramsey, I have a slightly different question for you. Both of you guys provide world-class technology to your clients and capabilities that help them navigate this complex ecosystem. So two-part question. A, what technical challenges does CTV present rather than the traditional kind of display or even mobile metrics, right? There's a natural complexity that comes with CTV, if you could explain that a little bit. And then part two, when the industry has a problem, it drives innovation and it gives us a reason to build new capabilities and something to aim for. Can you talk a little bit about some of the hard ones?
No. You start.
Pick one. I don't know. Talk a little bit about some of the products that you've put out specifically to support what I think is one of the more complex ecosystems there is, which is television.
Yeah, so CTV is new, generally, and it's a fascinating time because it's almost like a have and have not. So it's important to understand that context. You have what we see is like the top 500 advertisers spending a lot of time on the top 12. And then you have all the new fast channels coming in, and there's thousands of them just coming in every day from what we see. And then you have this other kind of seesaw going on in the industry where CTV is primarily, the majority is executed primarily through like programmatic guaranteed, right? And so there's this real interesting balance going on right now between the advertising community wanting more control over decisions media. So that's where kind of a lot of the demands that Suzie was talking about with respect to, like, we need better transparency, we need better control, because, like, if you're just doing a direct buy, chances are you get a lot of that. So to your question specifically about the technical challenges, unlike display, which is obviously much more mature, the technical challenges are also business challenges, because in the have bucket, you have publishers which have high sell-through, they're getting premium CPMs, they don't necessarily see a need to give more signal or to dive into a lot more programmatic, so that's being held back a little bit. So there's a business reason preventing the technical challenge. In programmatic, where you see more decision media and fast channels and publishers wanting to compete more, what's happening there is they're realizing that, I have to compete against the top 12, so I'm either going to do that with transparency, signal, and so forth. Now, the technical challenge is what's happening is signals are being passed, but they're not automated, they are not normalized, and in the programmatic space we're talking about specifically, they're not necessarily picked up in a consistent manner. And that's where Pure 39 comes in, we help and all that, but that's kind of like what's happening.
Don't undersell yourself, you do a great job.
Okay, great. So, trying to be nice. But those are kind of the markets that are kind of separated in what's happening in, and then the technical challenges are where like for us, and content and quality signals, they're not necessarily making their way all the way through, and that's preventing suits. Like, it's actually both. Like, publishers will say, I don't want you to cherry pick, but in reality what's happening is that Suzie's buying partners are seeing, let's say, a channel, and that channel may be all, let's say, for example, recipes, but they also may have DIY content that they're not selling appropriately. So they're missing out on demand under this idea that I don't want people to cherry pick. So there's a lot of new parts to this, and generally the CTV publishing side aren't necessarily the 20-year ad tech people, right? So.
I've said previously that I think CTV is the love child of linear and programmatic. And what I mean by that is it's going to exhibit attributes of both. In the display world where verification started, it was an ad tag wrapped by a verification tag that might also get another verification tag at the DSP and then another one along the way. So that verification tag is actually a parasite on the ad from the publisher's perspective. So it gets injected into the site, and it doesn't really understand the site because generally it's an iframe. So it's a very untrusted relationship, and it comes through in how it's technically set up. So it's this negative model that where the ad is called, or the verification provider is called at different times, so they get different measures. They're all right, but not perfectly right. It creates discrepancies. So I actually think we have to change the model on how we do CTV and have the publisher implementing code more deeply into the site, such that that code that's MRC accredited by the provider can be passed along to the buyer, so that there aren't all of these separate calls and delays and discrepancies in the process. We actually have launched a new product facilitating this called Passport. We think it's a fundamental problem. When we think about CTV overall for Mediaocean, even though everyone thinks it's going programmatic, the majority of CTV is still IO direct. And one of the reasons is because there is a lack of trust in that programmatic supply chain that would incent them, other than the
Well, it's a lack
cost.
of supply too, I mean.
What's that?
It's a lack of supply too to kind of put in the open market.
Yeah. There's a lack of supply, there's a lack of trust, and I think we have to change the way we technically implement it so that both sides feel like there's a winning relationship here.
Excellent. Just so you know, I think Jonah, according to Jonah, IAS or DV would have blocked that answer, just to be clear. So
I have been called Brandon.
Yeah, right.
Before.
So you've all referenced one thing, which is there's a lack of standardization. right? And I think any kind of growing ecosystem has a similar challenge, right? Like you're with standards, you're either lacking standards holistically, adoption rate for standards are slow, the cost of adoption is not conducive. There's capital investment before revenue, which no company at this stage is going to be doing. And fundamentally, there's market confusion. I think across CTV, it's really fair to say all 4 of those are applicable realistically. So when it comes to that, can each of you give your perspective on what's working, and then what can be improved upon, and then what can we do better moving forward? Suzie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I actually think that the industry groups are doing a good job working on setting the standards and collaborating with the industry. So, VAST has been out there forever, but I think VAST 4 was updated pre-COVID, and we're still really scaling VAST 2. And then you look at the OMID for CTV, which was released around 2000, and then now the devices are starting to update it and come along. So LG and Samsung devices are now passing their information throughout API, but now you have to look to the publishers and get it on their roadmap to do it. DV&IS and the verification partners are ready with their OMID capturing signal, but it needs to be passed around. So I think there is really good collaboration and leadership with the industry groups out there, but then how do we get it moving so that we do have that transparency and scale as the new channels and the fast channels move into the programmatic?
Is that something that a lot of the holding companies can help push into the market? Is it kind of, having been on the holding company side, is that part of their responsibility?
Yeah, I think it's conversation. It comes down to education. We need to educate our brands and need to make sure that the agencies have the talking points, understand what OMID is and how it works and how it fits in, and definitely. Mm-hmm.
I think we're in a gangly teenager phase of measurement writ large. I think everything that Suzie said is accurate, and then there are other pluses and minuses. Minuses are like GARM getting sued and people slowing innovation or discussions around the advancement of measurement and standards because of potential political retribution. I do think there are innovative companies, i.e. Mobian, I would put Protected in that as well, who are changing and challenging the way it's been done. And most of all, I think the brands and the agencies have people who are natively programmatic and come to this with an expectation that there are problems that need to be solved around convergence, consolidation, compression of fees, and we can use AI to do it. So it's probably going to take longer than we all think it will, but I'm thrilled that we're in the environment that we're in with the technology and the people and the slate of issues that we have to address.
I love it that before the robots can kill us, they'll fix ad serving, and that's what's really important.
You're really going back to the old days. Yeah. I think one of the things that we got to be honest about is that CTV, there's still a very large amount of CTV ads running that are coming from linear buys or upfront buys, and you really got to look at like the business motivation for doing things, and there will always be a lack of transparency if someone like Suzie and her constituents at other holding companies aren't saying this is how we want to operate, right? That's just honest. If we're in here, don't tweet it, but
circle of trust.
Yeah, but so from a standards point of view, it's. I think the JIC is trying, like everyone's trying, and we've all been paying attention to that. There's just a lot of new signals, and then what you were talking about, Ramsey, about the digital natives that are coming into CTV. They come into CTV and they're like, "What is this? Like, I'm used to thousands of signals to make optimizations and all that, and that's not in CTV." So they're looking at their CTV buys and like, how do I do optimizations? How do I do this? Like, what signals can I optimize off of, and so forth. So there's a lot of push for that, and I think a lot of publishers are trying to compete and do that, and we all have our technical challenges of trying to make that happen. And there's some work being done around content standards, what goes into a content object. We see maybe 30 or 40% of the calls in the global CTV ecosystem as having at least one signal that says content genre, but I will tell you that the majority of the time, the publisher, if this is self-declared, is putting a different genre for the entirety of the app, depending on which SSP they work with or what have you. And that's creating chaos because, you know, a financial news site may be completely brand safe, but they may say news, and someone thinks, I don't want to be on news this week because of the election cycle, so this really reputable publisher is just completely blocked. So we have to get around, as an industry, some form of like technical standards of what's being passed, and some accuracy as well. And there's, you know, there's a lot of work to be done there, but that's kind of where.
Most publishers are way behind meta tagging their content. I mean, they're really behind. So like some of the signals that you want to achieve, they're not even set up to do, right? So AI is going to help a lot with that, but again, that's investing ahead of revenue, which is, I think, tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's also business reasons there with what they can share about. So somebody may buy content to run on their FAST channel, but they can't tell what it is.
And the other thing in the code of trust, right, is like pick a publisher and 80% of the views are on 20% of the content, right? So like that's part of the challenge, right? Logistically. Well, so all that being said, you know, Voltaire said, perfect is the enemy of the good. So like the reality is that money still has to flow, and money is still flowing into CTV. And so, you know, it's, as you guys have pointed out, there's, you know, traditionally you buy TV and you're looking at a reach metric and maybe some brand metrics. And now you have the capabilities of all kinds of digital metrics that will help you make decisions. But, you know, that's almost pushing CTV, which has a finite supply, into a bottom of the funnel, you know, genre, if you will, which may or may not make sense in a lot of ways. So, you know, what's the balance of managing outcomes and the reality that television is not search and it's not social and has a very different scenario, right? You have co-viewing, you have a whole bunch of other stuff. So what's that kind of balance of outcome measurement and the need to have outcome measurement, but understanding the medium that you're in and the value of what it is and the sight, sound, and motion is different, and trying to compare and put display or social metrics on television?
Anyone? I could go.
Please.
Okay. So I think with CTV, there's a huge opportunity to make it work harder and get more outcomes from it instead of just saying, oh, this is awareness-based, top of funnel, because you do have that digital aspect to it. So it is a lot of co-viewing. You have your phone. How can you get somebody to engage on both fronts? And then how do you measure it and how do you pass that measurement? Which will, you know, it's the full cycle of keeping to come back. And there's been formats on CTV since 2014, 15, back when I was at Innovid. We were sticking a QR code.
Sure.
And then now the QR code has obviously has had a rebirth.
Took 10 years to build that behavior,
came back.
right? Like,
And Super Bowl ads.
But yeah, there's working groups right now about what are the standards of formats in CTV so that you can scale that. Is it a canvas? Are they overlays? What can you pull in as far as like geo to change the creative? So I think there's a huge opportunity to go past just the top funnel and bring it all the way down and then hold it accountable.
Does reach stop mattering if you have these other metrics?
I think it will always matter, but the other metrics definitely help to build the story.
Yeah, go back 20 years. You had a 30-second spot driving most of your reach. You used Nielsen to measure it. You had direct relationships with the publishers. And the non-working media fees, the fees associated with executing the media, were typically sub 3%. Now we have exploded every piece of that. And so when I think about it, I think about brand performance. It's a 2x2. Brand performance and media creative. And each of those boxes has measures. And I think there's a tremendous amount of exploration that we're all trying to do to figure out what's driving the outcomes. The P&Gs of the world still need to reach people who use toilet paper. So they need the reach, right? But they also have very specific products. They need to understand the entire funnel and then figure out what are those key metrics that drive the outcomes. And then they're going to compress the supply chain. and they're going to try to drive down the cost, so that dollar ends up being 95 cents to NBC or TikTok or whoever. Right now, I actually think most of the brands treat the agencies like slightly differentiated commodity services and bid them down in exactly the time when they should be investing in understanding measurement and the fragmentation and what's going to drive the outcomes that deliver sales and ultimately the enterprise value, the market cap of these companies.
Brilliant.
So you want more transparency?
Have to have it.
You're gonna need it.
Bringing that back.
Yeah, and then, again, I think there's a couple different markets. There's the top of the heap on the advertiser side, which they have all the bells and whistles. They have their Nielsen relationship. You know, Suzie works with them, and they're, you know, all the other holding companies. What's, I think, really interesting that we're starting to see is whether it's the tier 2 or the 1A market or what have you, where they may be a large mobile advertiser and they're buying in a DSP, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, look at this, I can now buy CTV, I can run the video ad. So I think that there's a whole onslaught of demand that is about to come into CTV, and there's a lot of startups that are making it very easy to produce a piece of either content or an ad and get that executed into the CTV ecosystem. That's going to really change dynamics a bit, right? You're going to have new interests of like, how do I measure that?
You talk about small and medium businesses coming into the fold,
Small
right?
and medium businesses, right? And like, you talk to any publisher, and Julian and I were talking about this the other week. It's like there's this concept of CTV for all, and everyone's talking about SMB. It just hasn't been operationalized in the way that I think the other parts. But you see a lot of companies starting to do that. But that's going to change the dynamic of performance versus the larger advertisers that need to reach everyone that uses toilet paper and so forth.
I think that answer deserves its own panel, but we'll probably do that another
You
time.
want to just ask Rob?
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. I have more questions, but for the sake of we're limited on time, does anybody in the audience have any questions they would like to ask these brilliant people? Yeah, of course. Come on. Let's go, Lou.
You want to get a chair?
Lou. Come on.
Get a chair. Bring him up. No.
Scream. Speak from the diaphragm, baby.
You guys mentioned GARM, and hi, everybody, that's you guys mentioned GARM, and we saw what happened with the Dentsu. Thank you. You guys mentioned GARM, and we just more recently saw what happened to Dentsu Coalition. And I'm concerned about the chilling effect on our industry and trade bodies, in particular, Suzie, which you mentioned, to continue to produce the standards and create the currencies that we need to transact as there's more and more balkanization, there's more and more fractionalization. Currency itself is really channel by channel, and in some cases vendor by vendor now. How do we be more brave and carry on in the midst of what seems like extraordinary action by the House Judiciary Committee and its chairman?
Pass.
You want to call CorpCom first?
They all have companies to worry about. I don't, so I'll answer this.
Go for it.
I think part of the problem with this is that it's been driven by people, and people have their biases. And to the degree that we can insert both standards, which we talked about lacking, so A, we need to have standards set, and then we can potentially introduce technology to remove some of the potential biases to a certain extent, and to then create scoring mechanisms, right? So that you have a threshold, right? Like I might like a 4, you, different advertiser, want a 6, right? So that gives people more potential optionality to make decisions. Because I think right now, what for good or bad, and I don't have a particular concern about it, but for good or bad, you do have a reality of people, and people have biases, and that's really what this comes down to, is that there was a perception of bias, right or wrong, and to the degree that we can adjust that and accommodate for that, that's, I think, what we probably have to do.
I would add one other thing. I'd look at it a little bit different. Thanks, Lou, for the question. We're a little off topic, but signals need to be objective. Like, that's it. You don't necessarily need companies or data companies building data that has opinion for certain things. You need to say what it is and not say it's negative or positive. You just have to say, this is news, this is breaking news, this is political. And I think if we have any kind of framework of how industry bodies need to go forward, it's eliminate bias and just return to objectivity, and just for us, it's like just say what it is, right? Don't have an opinion about it, and let everybody make their own decision. I think where people get in trouble is in industry trade orgs, and we all know what happened in recent years. Like, there's more opinion that went into the classifications, and that gets people in trouble. And it shouldn't be that way. You have to, as an industry trade body, it's like these are the standards, these are just the definitions, and you move on and remove the.
Can we do a much better job? Because Suzie said it well. Can we do a much better job of categorization and the level of nuance necessary to apply to that categorization, lacking opinion, but adding nuance, right? Like, to your point.
Yeah, you don't have to say what the opinion is. You can just say it's opinion. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's really, and a lot of the audience don't understand this, because when they say opinion, they're like, well, what kind of opinion it is? Like, no, you just have to say it's an opinion article, and are you comfortable with that, right? And that's, like in your past lives, Lou, like that's like the work that Publicis did with you. Like, it's opinion. I'm okay with it because it's in trusted news, but. Not necessarily trusted news, but in news. Like, I think you just have to be objective about the data and remove the bias.
I'm going to take more standards, right, as a big takeaway here, because I think that's one of the things that we're,
I think adoption of standards too, because some are already out there that we could just
absolutely
adopt.
All right, well, we're out of time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.